April 7, 1945. The morning sky over Tokyo burns with an eerie crimson glow. A Japanese fighter pilot adjusts his leather gloves inside the cramped cockpit of his aircraft, preparing for what he believes will be another routine intercept of American bombers. His radio suddenly crackles with panicked voices from ground control. Unknown fighters approaching from the southeast. Silver aircraft. Single engines. The veteran pilot's blood runs cold. Southeast means they're coming from the open Pacific. The nearest American fighter base is over 600 miles away on Saipan. No fighter aircraft in existence has that kind of range. It's aerodynamically impossible. Or so he thought. What this pilot was about to witness would shatter everything he believed about aerial warfare. American fighters were about to appear over the heart of Japan itself. And they had fuel to spare. But how did they get there? And more importantly, what did this mean for Japan's last line of defense? To understand the terror spreading through Japanese cockpits that morning, you need to grasp a fundamental truth about fighter aircraft in 1945. Every military planner on both sides accepted one immutable law. Range and performance were mortal enemies. You could have one or the other, never both. The Japanese had mastered this cruel equation years earlier. Their legendary A-6M0 achieved famous range by stripping away everything that kept pilots alive. No armor, no self-sealing fuel tanks, no protection whatsoever. The result was a fighter that could fly enormous distances but erupted in flames from a single well-placed burst. Japanese pilots whispered dark jokes about their own aircraft. When American guns found their mark, the Zero became a flying coffin. American fighters represented the complete opposite philosophy. The P-47 Thunderbolt packed devastating firepower and could absorb punishment that would obliterate a Zero. But its combat radius barely exceeded 300 miles. The twin-engine P-38 Lightning offered better range, but still required bases relatively close to targets. This fundamental limitation gave Japanese home defense a crucial advantage. As long as American fighters couldn't reach the mainland, Japan's experienced pilots could focus entirely on destroying unescorted bombers. Every B-29 crew flying over Japan knew a terrifying truth. Once they crossed the coastline, they were completely alone. At 0647 hours, climbing through 12,000 feet in tight formation, a Japanese pilot spots them first. A formation of sleek silver aircraft diving toward the massive Nakajima aircraft factory. But something's wrong with what he's seeing. These aren't bombers. They're single-engine fighters. And they're moving with the aggressive confidence of aircraft operating from their home base. The radio explodes with confused chatter. Pilots across the Tokyo area reporting the same impossible sight. American fighters conducting precision attacks hundreds of miles from any known base. One veteran with 25 victories to his credit closes to 1,000 yards on the mysterious silver formation. What he sees makes no sense. The aircraft are beautiful in a deadly way. Clean lines. Purposeful design. Elliptical wings reminiscent of the British Spitfire, but with a longer, more aggressive nose. Most unsettling of all, they carry large external fuel tanks under their wings. Yet they're maneuvering like aircraft at the beginning of a mission, not at the fuel-starved end. Those drop tanks should be empty by now. They should be running on fumes. Instead, these silver ghosts were hunting, and Japanese pilots were the prey. What the defenders didn't realize was that they were witnessing the culmination of American and British engineering genius. The marriage of North American aviation's P-51 airframe with Rolls-Royce Merlin engine technology had created something that defied conventional wisdom. The P-51 Mustang carried 184 gallons of fuel internally. Add two 108-gallon external drop tanks, and you had 400 gallons of fuel in a single-engine fighter. More than twice what any Japanese pilot had ever encountered. But fuel capacity alone meant nothing without efficiency. The Packard-built Merlin V1650-7 engine delivered 1,695 horsepower while sipping fuel with remarkable economy. Combined with the Mustang's aerodynamically perfect design, this created a fighter with a combat radius exceeding 850 miles. Total range approached 1,650 miles. Numbers that rewrote everything military planners thought they knew about fighter aircraft. These silver machines had flown over 675 miles from Iwo Jima. They had fought a high-intensity air battle over Tokyo, and they still had enough fuel to make it home. The impossible had just become reality, and Japan's entire defensive strategy had just become obsolete. The engagement begins in earnest at 0658 hours over the Masau Suyinaga industrial complex. Within seconds, Japanese pilots realize they're fighting ghosts, aircraft that shouldn't exist, performing maneuvers that defy logic, flown by pilots who should be desperately conserving every drop of fuel for the journey home. Instead, the Mustangs are hunting with predatory aggression. An American flight leader's voice crackles through the radio. "Drop tanks now. We've got company." Japanese pilots watch in stunned disbelief as external fuel tanks tumble toward Earth. Not because they're empty, but because the Americans are preparing for combat with fuel to spare. One Japanese captain turns to meet the attack head-on, a tactic that has served him well against fuel-starved American fighters before. But as the silver Mustang approaches, he notices something that freezes his blood. The American isn't flying like a pilot at the end of a 700-mile death march. He's flying like he just took off from his home field. The two fighters close at a combined speed exceeding 700 miles per hour. Cannons and machine guns light up the morning sky. At the last second, both pilots brake in opposite directions. But instead of extending to conserve fuel, the American immediately reverses into a climbing turn. Chasing, hunting, relentless. This defies everything Japanese pilots know about long-range operations. How much fuel do these aircraft carry? What the Japanese captain doesn't know is that his opponent started this mission with 400 gallons of fuel. Even after flying 675 miles from Iwo Jima, the Mustang still carries 200 gallons. Enough for an hour of high-intensity combat and the long flight home. 3 miles away, another Japanese pilot finds himself in an even more desperate situation. He's engaged two Mustangs simultaneously. They're coordinating attacks with precision that speaks of endless training and absolute confidence. He broadcasts frantically to ground control. These fighters aren't running. They're not conserving fuel. How is this possible? An American pilot speaks to his wingman on the radio. His words would later be recorded by Japanese intercept stations. "They don't understand, do we? We can stay and fight. We can stay and hunt. We can reach anywhere in their empire and still make it home." The psychological impact is immediate and devastating. Everything Japanese pilots built their defensive strategy around has just been shattered. The assumption that American fighters must turn back at the coastline is dead, burned away by aircraft performing impossible feats 650 miles from their base. One Japanese pilot makes a fatal mistake. Assuming the Americans must be critically low on fuel, he tries to outlast them, extend the engagement, wait for them to break off. Instead, the Mustang closes methodically, patient, confident. A killing burst tears into the Japanese fighter's engine. Oil and coolant explode in a geyser of destruction. The pilot's last transmission captures the moment of realization. They're not leaving. They're not running out of fuel. How did they get here? Meanwhile, one of Japan's most experienced aces finds himself locked in single combat with a Mustang over the burning Nakajima factory. For 3 minutes, an eternity in aerial combat, the two aircraft dance through the sky. The Japanese pilot flies a Ki-84 Japan's most advanced fighter, theoretically superior to the Mustang in climb rate and turning ability. But theory crumbles against reality. The American is flying a fighter that crossed an ocean to reach this battlefield, and still possesses fuel and ammunition for uncompromising aggression. In a move that aviation historians would study for decades, the American deliberately sacrifices altitude for speed, diving from 15,000 to 8,000 feet. Any rational long-range pilot would be hoarding every drop of fuel for the journey home. Instead, he's trading fuel for tactical advantage. With the confidence of someone who knows exactly what his aircraft can do, the Japanese pilot follows the dive and realizes the trap too late. The Mustang's superior high-speed handling gives the American the advantage. The abundant fuel reserves allow aggressive maneuvering that the Japanese pilot cannot match. At 8,000 feet, the American pulls into a climbing left turn. 6 heavy machine guns fire in perfect synchronization. Bullets tear through the Japanese fighter's wing and fuel tank. As his aircraft begins its final dive toward the streets below, the Japanese ace has one last conscious thought. If they can come this far, if they can fight this long, We have already lost the war. At 0714 hours, just 16 minutes after first contact, the engagement ends. 7 Japanese fighters have been destroyed. 2 Mustangs took damage, but both will make it back to Iwo Jima. A round trip exceeding 1,350 miles. For a single-engine fighter. Radio chatter from Japanese ground control tells the story of a revolution in warfare. All units report status. How many American fighters still operational? Are they withdrawing to their carriers? There are no carriers within 500 miles. Then where are they going? One of the few Japanese survivors would later write in his diary. Today I saw the future of air warfare. And it terrifies me. If the Americans can send fighters anywhere in our empire with fuel to spare, then nowhere is safe. The homeland is no longer protected by distance. He was right. Between April 7th and August 15th, 1945, P-51 Mustangs flew 51 very long-range missions against the Japanese home islands. Round trips averaging 1,350 miles. Distances considered pure fantasy just months earlier. American fighters claimed 341 Japanese aircraft destroyed. Only 62 Mustangs were lost. But the true devastation wasn't measured in aircraft shot down. It was measured in the complete collapse of Japanese pilot morale. One veteran who survived the war with 38 victories later recalled the psychological impact. After April 1945, we stopped believing we could win. If the Americans could send fighters from Iwo Jima to Tokyo with fuel to spare, what else could they do? Where could we hide? The answer was nowhere. Japan's aircraft factories, previously protected by geography, became regular targets for precision fighter attacks. The Japanese attempt to counter this new threat only emphasized their desperation. By summer 1945, experienced pilots were attempting to ram B-29 bombers. Not from samurai honor. From the practical reality that traditional tactics had become useless against enemies who could appear anywhere. With unlimited endurance. The ability to project fighter power across vast distances had shifted the strategic balance permanently. Geographic protection meant nothing anymore. The empire that once seemed shielded by ocean now lay exposed. Every factory, every airfield, every ship in port, all within reach of silver aircraft that rewrote the rules of what was possible. Today, military analysts still study those impossible flights from Iwo Jima to Tokyo. Textbook examples of how range, endurance, and strategic reach can become decisive weapons. The P-51 Mustang's very long-range missions stand as one of history's greatest demonstrations of how technological breakthrough can fundamentally alter warfare. The silver Mustangs that shocked Japanese pilots over Tokyo that April morning didn't just win air battles. They redefined what was possible in the sky. They proved that with the right combination of engineering brilliance and tactical innovation, the impossible becomes inevitable. One question echoed through Japanese command that morning. A question that would haunt military planners for generations. How did they get here? The answer changed the world. The age of limited fighter range ended over Tokyo, and warfare would never be the same. If you found this story as incredible as we did, make sure to subscribe to Hidden WW2 for more untold stories from history's